All right, and welcome back to Coffee with Toffees, guys. It is, well, when you're watching, it's 11/24, 2014, but for the sake of tonight, we're doing a pre-record here with our special guest, Andrew Ziori Campbell, and it is the 22nd. So for those of you who are joining us live, we appreciate you guys being here, and a big shout out to Ziori for making some time in what I'm sure is a very busy day for you. I think you had Starladder coverage all day today.
Yeah, that was one game today. Not a very busy schedule today.
That's easy.
We've been busy with the summit, though. We've been busy in other ways.
And we're going to ask all about the summit because I want to know just what it looks like as it starts to develop. That said, he's taken some time to be here with us today. We thought he'd come by Friday, but he took some time to be with his pillows and bed instead, which, I respect that. I love my sleep as much as the next man.
Yeah, I am really embarrassed about that. I feel really bad. I feel like I can empathize more than most because I used to be a show host on this exact same time slot, and constantly people bitched about how terrible the timing was guest-wise. So I just feel terrible. I don't know what happened. I wish I could blame my phone or some other piece of technology, but I think I was just eager for some sleep, man. My bad.
I respect that. Oh, the Skype caps.
Oh, yeah.
The Skype cap stopped working, so we're just going to go to a picture of you because I can't figure out why the Skype is freaking out. So if you want to turn off your camera, you're more than welcome to. We just got a really cool picture that I stole off your Twitter. Right on. All right, so, hung up by accident. There we are. We're back.
That's my bad. I meant to turn off my camera and I hung up on you. That's,
I've been hung up on before. I dated in high school. So that said, enough awkward conversation. Let's go into the actual meat and potatoes of this bad boy. So first and foremost, guys, for those of you who don't know, and this is a big moment for me because I'm a Ziori fan. Now, I know that sometimes that's not popular, but I stand by you, and I've stood by you for a long time because in Starladder Season 8, Ziori, I don't know if you know this, but that is the first time that I have watched a religious, and I say the word religious because it was insane how much Starladder I watched. Every single Starladder game during Season 8, I watched coverage, and you pretty much solo casted that entire qualifying section of the tournament. So I saw a lot of Ziori, and then I went and watched a bunch of amateur and semi-pro tournaments, and they sucked. And I said, holy shit, I bet I could do better casting if I emulate Ziori, and I did, and that's why I started casting in the first place. So thank you for being an inspiration, sir.
Well, thank you for the kind words, man. It's always nice to hear positive stories like that, how I've inspired people. That really warms my heart. That was a good season of Starladder. Season 8,
awesome.
Season 7 was the one that I started doing for Dota Radio, and that was like kind of my first religious Dota casting experience. I just said, I'm just going to sit down and fucking do it, And I'm going to cast this whole group stage. And it was okay, whatever. That was the season that Toby kind of that was the last season Toby did with Starladder, and they were not satisfied with the amount of games he covered, given that they, kind of marketed the tournament as Toby official English coverage. So next season, around season 8, Beyond the Summit was moving to a new studio, and they basically needed somebody to do remote coverage, and I had met LD in particular and also David Parker a little bit at MLG Columbus. So the timing kind of worked out. I had done the last season, and I was finally, after 4 years in esports, I was in the right place at the right time with the right skill set around the right people that had enough money to pay me a decent salary. So
that's awesome.
That season worked out pretty well. It was the last thing I really covered before I moved out to Los Angeles. I'll never forget that season.
Yeah, it sounds kind of like the acting business, but no, it was, and that was a Super Strong Dinosaurs season too, which I sort of missed that team, right? Well, I met with PPD the other day, and I was like, I got to talk about Super Strong Dinosaurs. So that was a fun season. I will also say that we've started a launch of our own Dota audio broadcast, and it was brought to my attention that not only that, but my show in general in the mornings follows almost the exact same format that yours used to. So again, thank you for preparing the way for Coffee with Toffees. It makes me feel nice that you got so busy I was able to steal all of your time slots.
Yeah, no problem, dude. I was trying to sell the domain Dota Radio for a little while. I still think it's a good domain, and I couldn't believe it wasn't taken. I had this really odd epiphany moment when I was on vacation in like August of last year, and I thought about Dota Radio, and I was on vacation with my ex. We were exes at the time, not current breakup. Anyway, it's a minor detail. It was still, I looked it up right away. I was like, holy shit, DotaRadio.com. I'm buying this right now before somebody else takes it. It turns out the demand for Dota Radio domains is not nearly as high as I thought, but I'm holding on to it. It redirects to a special page on Ziori TV now, so I'm holding on to it. But I honestly miss the Dota radio days a little bit. It was a fun time in my career. It was minimal responsibilities, low overhead, almost no income, and a whole barrel of fun. So I don't know. It was just a fun time, I guess. A lot different than what I'm doing at BTS now.
But still a whole barrel of fun, I'm sure.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, well, it's, you know, I look at a lot of stuff in esports as like kind of stepping stones. Everything moves so fast that, you know, we're not in this age anymore that I mean, I don't know how old you are, but our parents lived in of you could get a job with the first company you work at right out of, you know, postgraduate study, and that's it. You know, you're set for life. You get a big fat pension, you work there for 40 years, you retire, and boom, you die, and that's cool. We are the complete opposite of that, dude. These companies in esports, if you last 2-3 years, you're a dinosaur, man. You've been around for the long haul, and a lot of them don't last much more than 5 because games don't last that long. So I don't know. It was just too big of an opportunity to turn down. I was really excited. That was kind of what I always aspired to. It's weird how your perspective changes on where you want your goals to be when you're doing Dota Radio and you've got like 50 viewers and you're thinking you're hot shit and it's awesome, and then. I mean, I remember the first time I was on stream to 10K people, I was breathing funny, man. I was so nervous that I was going to shit myself. I remember the first time I broke 100 viewers. It was casting a StarCraft tournament. I was casting Destiny, Stephen Bonnell. A bunch of viewers came on my stream, and God, man, I lost my whole cadence. I couldn't. It's crazy how as you continue growing, you get used to stuff. And the same way I felt at StarLadder when we broke 100K viewers. I don't know.
Well, it's strange.
BTS is a lot of fun.
Well, it's strange, too, because you go from the, when you run the small casts and the community sort of cast or Dota Radio, you're sort of reading chat the whole time and interacting with the customer, and all of a sudden you break 100 and you're trying and it's tough, and then you get to that 1,000 mark and you're just like, God damn, Twitch chat, I don't think I can do anything with you. And that can, I assume that throws you off your cadence a little bit. It's got to be confusing to move away from the interactive audience experience to the purely studio experience.
A little bit. It's really lonely work, which is sort of strange and something I feel like you don't really realize till you're doing it. I certainly didn't realize it, but we're at the point now where we're, by we I mean BTS casters, sort of mini celebrities, not to talk myself up, you know, and at the right venue at TI or something, people think we're hot shit and want our signatures and are excited to meet us and stuff. So it seems like, wow, you have so many fans, so many friends, you're always going out and doing stuff, and everybody must think you're awesome. You're living the dream, dude. This is awesome, right? And it is awesome, but it's a lot of work, and it's just not like that. We live in a house with 5 dudes that are not from the area, that don't really know anybody, and we just do nothing but Dota. While we eat dinner, we talk about Dota, we talk about behind-the-scenes stuff, we cast, we work on the summit. It's just nonstop. We don't really get a break from each other. We don't go out to clubs and people are like, hey, the BTS guys, what up? You know, we're not that cool. You're lucky if, you know, somebody recognizes you once every couple of months. So it's... Yeah, what was the question again? I got off topic here.
Let me move to this then. And this has just popped into my head. Do you guys know your neighbors, and what do your neighbors think that you do?
That's a very interesting question. We don't really. We wish we didn't. One side they don't interface with us at all. I think they might have moved or something. On the other side, they are not fond of our late night loud activities. We've had some issues at the NA hub. There's actually a VOD of Mott and What Is Hip casting where you can hear somebody yelling to turn down volumes and stuff, and it's a thing. So I don't know. We're in sort of close proximity, so it's an issue, but we've taken some measures to deal with it.
Excellent. So a couple of things to start out with the interview. Now I've heard that you do yoga. Is this true?
It is very true.
Is this a regular activity, or is it sort of like when I go to the gym once a month?
Well, it was a regular activity, and then I went to Kiev, and everything stopped becoming a regular activity, and I've been a bum since I got back. That seems to be what happens. Most people I talk to that do the workout thing that aren't really that serious about it, but get serious about it at little spurts. Traveling makes that a little more difficult because it just gets so easy to get out of your routine and become complacent. So now I've been going once every couple weeks. They also... the time slot I like, at the gym I go to, they changed instructors, and I don't like the new instructor very much. I miss Melanie. Melanie, I don't know where you are, but your yoga is way better than Gina, or whatever her name is. It's terrible.
Fair enough. Now, is this something you started doing when you moved to the hippie world of California, or have you done this the entire time?
No, it's funny you asked that. I was having some back issues. I wrote a whole big blog about it, and I've done some videos about ergonomics and posture and stuff, and basically it's just the result of using the computer for 14 hours a day for 10 years and being hunched over and having terrible posture. So I have some muscle issues on the one side of my back, and I realized for a while that it's just because I don't have any muscle tone, because I'm totally complacent and I don't move or do anything besides sit in front of the computer. So I realized, hey man, if I don't want my body to hurt, I got to start working out. So I started treadmilling it a little bit, hitting the rower, lifting some weights, and that's helped ail some of my woes. And then Merlini's girlfriend actually suggested yoga as something that might help muscle issues in the back. And well, she was right. I started going, and I really enjoyed it. Now I have quite the affinity for yoga pants, though I actually ironically don't wear the yoga pants to the yoga studio because it just doesn't work right on dudes. Right. So it's very comfortable to wear around the house.
So speaking of yoga pants at the yoga studio, you did mention to Zoe once at an interview that you'd be wearing the Dota 2 tights for yoga. Did that ever actually happen, or did that never actually happen?
I'm not sure if I've actually done that yet. I usually wear basketball shorts to keep things. So the thing with the tights is it's not that bad. You just have to wear a long shirt, and you're doing like. You're just doing poses in yoga where your sausage is just in the way. It's a little too out there. And yoga is not about putting it out there. It's about stretching, I guess. I don't know. So maybe I still need to do that. I also realized I'm not a medium in leggings. So the leggings I was wearing in that interview with Zoe, I could not do yoga in those. My ass would be falling out like crazy. It would be Bad News Bears all over the place.
They were very tight. I will not deny that.
Yeah, I lied to myself. I said, you're a medium, think thin, and you can think that all you want, but in reality, I am a large, and I just have to come to terms with it. It's okay.
It confirms I worry is a large. So you said that you picked up well, I guess we sort of came to the decision you picked up yoga when you moved to Hippie, California. Where are you from originally?
I am a Jersey boy, southern New Jersey.
So you're part of that East Coast crew that there's apparently a lot of us from this East Coast that are involved with esports.
Yeah, it seems to be the hot spot. I don't know. I mean, LD's from New Jersey also. Mm-hmm. It's not that great. I was excited to come to California. I'm from like very southern in New Jersey, and it sounds kind of silly because it's one of the smaller states, but it has the highest population density of any state. So don't count New Jersey out. There's a lot of people living in that little funky land over there next to the Atlantic. So the southern part is just very. It's a little more country-ish where I'm from, a little more rural, very hickish, and just wasn't a pleasant place to grow up, man. I don't know. It was all right, but people didn't take fondly to my long hair and my tight pants, and I was not really into mudding or hay bales or any of that such. So
I understand completely. Mudding was never my jam. So regarding that sort of background thing, on an interview on Chat Wheel with the Gerg and the rest of his crew, and it was an interesting chat wheel to say the least. It was like he brought in all of the high ground people to sit there and just give you a hard time, which was entertaining. But you said that your family had gone from sort of, quote unquote, saying that you were wasting your time to a far more supportive attitude once you moved to California. Can you tell me a little bit about the time before the move, and what was it like? Was your family supportive at all, or did it even matter to you that they might not have been?
Wow, yeah. So it's been a long stretch for my esports thing. It started as just a hobby, and it kind of slowly grew into a career. And that was sort of my vision all along, was like, well, I can't just afford to buy a bunch of studio equipment, and I kind of suck at casting when everybody sucks when you first start. It takes a long time, just a lot of practice to be, okay at it. And I don't even know how many hours I've got on the mic, but it's an ass load over the 4.5 years I've been casting stuff. So it started off just a total hobby, and I wanted to use my money, as I had very little disposable income as a sophomore in undergrad, just to do things that were hybrid fun and business related. I had this really good guest speaker that kind of motivated me, that talked about the key to success is drawing a Venn diagram. On one side is all the shit you like to do, and the other side is all the shit in the world that makes money, and finding that intersection so that you can do stuff that you really enjoy in your free time that you could also make money from and make it a quote-unquote business. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So I used my money to travel around to events. I went to a lot of MLGs in 2011, 2012. I've been to PAX the last 3 years in a row. Upgraded my processor, bought more monitors, that kind of shit with any disposable income I had. So at that point, it was just sort of fun, and my parents were like, oh, that's cool. You're engaged in something. That's awesome. Slap on the back. Good job, sport. Then when I graduated, I'm like, all right, well, I'm not really in any hurry to find a job. And at that time, I was contracting with S2, and they were talking about offering me a job right after I graduated, and that timeline got a little bit messed up. And then ultimately, I turned down the offer they made. So then I tried to do stuff on my own, and I was freelancing in quote-unquote full-time esports. And that's all swell, but you know, that time when you're living with your parents after you graduate is always it's in limited supply, and it just gets more difficult the longer that you're there, and especially with something like this where you're working from home. And I don't know. From my parents' perspective, it was hard for them to tell if I was just playing games or working, and it's a little bit of both. It's work and fun, you know. Play Dota for fun, but it's all you need to stay familiar with the game and play Heroes to be able to talk about it, you know, somewhat coherently. So it was always sort of a tough point, and sort of just trying to make them understand that it's not like an internet scam, or like it's not it's not just an excuse to play video games all day, because like most gamers, or you have those tips with your parents when you're younger about you need to go outside, or I just want to play WoW in my room all weekend, that kind of stuff. So my parents are both doctors, they're veterinarians, so they're scientists, man. They're all about empirical data. So like, I'll believe that you can make money at doing this when you make money at doing this. I'm like, all right, well, I'm trying, guys. I'm really trying my darndest. And I applied for a lot of jobs. I did the whole, you know, up-and-comer esports thing. I've applied to quite a few different companies over the years. Obviously, not many of them have panned out. And once I told him, there's been a couple times where I thought I had something in the bag and it fell through. So when I said, guys, I think I'm going to move out to California, I don't think they really believed me. I think they kind of thought like, yeah, sure, all right. Yeah, you said this like 3 or 4 times already. Good luck. And I remember when I was packing my car, and right before I left, just the look on my mom's face. My parents had divorced and remarried, and I was living at my mom's house. And I remember she would just like had this look on her face of, "You're actually going to get in the car and drive to California. You're actually going." And I was, you know, so part of my move to BTS was not just having a job in esports, but also just, you know, taking that next jump of independence as a human. So. I think my parents ended up being kind of proud, and kind of that it was a case where they were happy to be proven wrong about some of the assumptions they made about what I was doing in esports, you know, 2-3 years ago when I was really shitty and not making any money, and it was more of a hobby that I wanted to be a business, and that I actually, you know, I didn't come back after a couple weeks, and I, you know, haven't filed bankruptcy yet.
But you stuck at it, and then you, from what I understand from watching the blog series, it sounds like you just threw like 3 duffel bags in the back of your truck and a computer or car, and then drove across the country. Yeah,
pretty much. That's not that far from the truth. I have a 2001 Honda Accord, so not the most space, but I'm a guy that can travel pretty light. I had to get a new mattress when I moved out here. You know, LD had a little bit of furniture waiting for me, a bed frame and a dresser, and so I bought a desk chair and stuff. But it was pretty much like that. Just hopped on and went for it. It was pretty fun to drive across the country. Yeah, so I did it completely solo.
Yeah, definitely not as much fun solo, but fun still to go across the country. So, grand adventure out to California. Before you took the adventure, now, I know that you were involved with StarCraft, I know that you did Dota, and I've heard that you were involved with Heroes of Newerth as well. How were you involved with that game? Was that where you got your start casting, or was that just playing a lot of?
A little bit of both. It's really. I'm glad you're asking these questions, Toffees. These are things that I love to talk about, but I never have a platform to talk about, because history in esports just evaporates. So this stuff seems so recent, but it was a few years ago. Anyway, I started in StarCraft 2. That's how I got sort of just introduced to esports. I bought it on a whim. I had some French-Canadian friends like, you got to try this game. It's awesome. So I bought it, sucked at it, played it a little bit, got a bit better, grinded my way up to Diamond. And somebody said, oh, you should play in one of these amateur tournaments on Team Liquid. And when that got linked to me, I saw they used to have the little number up top of how many active users, and it kind of blew my mind a little bit. And I just had no idea that kind of thing existed. And it just sort of fit everything that I've always looked for in a hobby, career, obsession, you know? Video games. I've always been fascinated with cameras and recording and movies, and just, you know, never really technically savvy. I never was in the AV club or anything, but just sort of thought that was cool, being able to record stuff, and it always kind of piqued my interest. And then just the expression part. You know, you get to talk about it. There's competition. I used to play soccer when I was a sprout, you know? I kind of like sports a little bit. So I just realized it was the perfect mesh of all the things that I liked. I was like, wow, this esports thing is pretty cool. And I tried to play in this tournament. It was really shitty. So I decided, hey, maybe I can start doing tournaments of my own that won't be shitty. So I'm sort of an amateur coder, and I do some web programming. So I got together a little website and found some friends, and we decided to host tournaments. And when it came to casting, and I brought up who's going to do it, everyone else kind of simultaneously said, not me. I was like, all right, well, I guess I'll give it a try. How hard can it be? So I just kind of started practicing and just started casting more and more. And then we started hosting these weekly micro tournaments, like $25 opens. And at the time, that was kind of cool. We could fill like a 128 person bracket with 25 bucks and do a 2-day tournament over Friday and Saturday. Pretty cool, actually. You know, we had a couple of decent players, and it was a lot of fun. It was a way to get my feet wet for a pretty small amount of money, and travel to MLGs and stuff. So after about a year in StarCraft, it got there's a whole lot of stuff that I worked with some people, and I had this big falling out with my team in Anaheim of 2011 at MLG. Basically, my co-caster, this guy named Logan, him and this girl we were working with locked me out of the hotel room, quote, by accident, and I had to sit outside for like 5 hours from like 4 a.m. to, I don't know, 7 a.m. or something.
Jeez.
The whole thing was so fucking stupid. Anyway, that's a micro detail, but I ended up pulling the plug on that project, and I was thinking about like doing something else. My parents were like, you know, if you really like this, you shouldn't let this failed project hold you back. So I bought Zyori.tv, got all this stuff transferred over, and I just started streaming myself playing Han because I figured, what the hell, I like this game. I was playing Dota, and then the same Frenchies that introduced me to StarCraft 2 got me a Han beta key. I was like, oh, this is like Dota 2.0, sweet. So I started playing that and streaming it, and at the time, I had done a little bit of StarCraft stuff with itsgosu.com. I don't know if you remember that shit can of a website, but I used to do some, I guess I can say, work for them. I got paid very little. I volunteered for them is probably a more appropriate word. But they had an offer from S2 to start doing Heroes of Newerth tournaments. Their competitive scene was kind of drying up, and they wanted to sponsor stuff, but they didn't want it to be like S2 tournaments. So they found Itsgosu, and they gave us a couple thousand a month to host tournaments and like put up the prize pools. And Itsgosu paid me like $50 a tournament to cast and put together. But it was pretty cool at the time. They were like, all right, here's a few $1,000s. You assemble the team. You decide on the format, put it all together, and it'll be your project. I was like, all right, cool. So we did like 6 months of Han tournaments, and I casted with various people, and that was kind of how, that was my first mini breakthrough in casting, where we actually had like hundreds of viewers and like stuff going, and I was putting a little bit of a couple hundred bucks a month in my pocket. It wasn't so bad for the time. That was pretty cool. I was like just ending my time at undergrad, and then as I kept casting more and more, there weren't that many other prevalent Han casters besides Breaky, and Han Cast was looking to expand, and they built a whole studio in Kalamazoo, and they offered me a position to start doing remote work. So I left Itsgosu, and was Breaky's co-caster, and did remote casting for like $500 a month, I think was the contract. And at the time, I'm fucking doing dances, flipping my biscuits. I'm going, $500 a month to cast video games. This is awesome. Oh man, I'm flipping out. So this is like DreamHack Summer 2012. I got to cast that DreamHack with Breaky. Like I was flown out, all paid for and everything. And that was kind of my first big event. That was cool. First time I ever signed an autograph, that kind of shit. And that was a lot of fun. Really good learning experience. Breaky is definitely, he was the high point of my S2 experience. A lot of the people they had that I had to interface with were either jerks or really clueless, but Breaky is pretty good at what he does, and he was really, like, at that event, he really carried me. He showed me a lot of stuff and just kind of taught me how to host a big event, and that's just something I'd never really thought about before. So anyway, they made me an offer. I think I've talked about it publicly before, but they had a little mess up where they sent me an offer for a really large amount of money, and I was just like, wow, they think I'm worth $80,000 a year? This is crazy. All right. Of course, the contract was meant to be for 30, and they said, oh, sorry, I was a little typo, my bad. And I kind of flipped out and said, all right, you know what? Fuck this, fuck you. It wasn't really about the contract. That was just sort of the icing on the cake. It was more about, at the time, I just didn't want to be a mouthpiece for S2. They had a lot of problems. Han had a lot of problems. There were a lot of legitimate criticisms that they just were not fixing. And at the time, I really valued being a voice in the scene that wasn't owned by S2, that could podcast and just say whatever I want and not have to be like, well, you guys are paying my bills, so... even just at DreamHack, I still had the papers of all the stuff that you weren't allowed to talk about, all the things you're supposed to dodge questions. And so Mike, the contract they sent me is hysterical if you read it. There's like one tick that says, remain unbiased when doing interviews. The next one is, refrain from saying anything negative about Heroes of Newerth or S2 when making public statements. I'm like, well, it doesn't go both ways, dude. You can't be unbiased and never say anything negative. So I just was turned off by that. So then I started. I did some stuff in League of Legends. I tried to with It's Gosu. It was a disaster, mostly because of It's Gosu. But and that's something I really wanted to do anyway. I wanted to cast Dota, but AC was the full-time Dota caster for It's Gosu. So this long story kind of summarized here. AC got a job at EG doing the D2L stuff or whatever it was, but I don't know if it had a different name before that. So then I got promoted to Dota caster. I did one tournament in like 2012. Right around TI time. I casted with Kawa, who used to work for BTS, of all people. And I was at the time working on programming a Dota King of the Hill. Like, I wanted to break into Dota 2, and I was going to do like a weekly King of the Hill thing and have a little like interface on my website and put up a little bit of cash. And then I got an offer from Garena in Singapore to do some Han casting, remote contracting work. A similar gig to what I had with S2, except I'd be their premier talent, and it would be less hours than what I was doing at Honcast. I was like, oh, well, this is pretty decent money. I could use the paycheck. So I started doing that while I was programming the Dota thing, and then I got caught up in that, like, well, I'm getting paid to do this, but I really want to be doing this where I have to just kind of jump into it before I can get paid. I can't really cast Dota and Han at the same time. You have to sort of commit. Right. And I kind of got caught up in that, and that was basically led up to the unfortunate streaming incident. I mean, if you recall, I don't know if you saw the video, but Dota 2 was open in the background. So that was like me training Dota 2. I was like probably 300 games played or something, looking to make the switch from Han. So after that, I took a break, tried the real world, worked at an IT job for 6 months for the New Jersey state government. It was awful. I gained weight and was just... God, I don't want to hyperbole, but I was pretty depressed, man. That shit was really terrible. So I just spent all day dreaming about esports, and that was when I got into League of Legends cosplay.
Yep.
Looked for something a little different, and I saw kind of a gap in the market with cosplayers and kind of video podcast content. Unfortunately, the group I assembled was not particularly interesting on camera, but it was still an interesting thought, like experiment, and it in the long run, it's actually helped me out a lot. Just learning about how cosplayers work and how to interface with them. Almost every project I've had since then has had something to do with cosplayers, where I've said to myself, wow, that cosplay podcast I did has really come in handy in this situation. Thank you, cosplay podcast. That was very unsuccessful at the time.
Right.
Really got me out of a sticky here.
So I've heard there's going to be some cosplay. I know some cosplayers got invited to the actual summit too. Is that you're doing? Are you bringing the cosplayers to the summit?
Sort of. Yeah, I know that Jessica Hunter girl is very salty about it, and I'm really not sure why. That's not really my doing. Our sponsor originally wanted to have models at the viewing party, and I was not. We in general were not that keen on just sort of generic models. Just like okay, so we just got like booth babes here. Like that's not really our style. So we were able to talk him into bringing in cosplayers, and I was honored with the duty of selecting the cosplayers, and I had met a whole bunch of them at TI4. So I contacted them, and they'll be attending half the event for the viewing party. They probably won't even be on stream for more than a couple minutes, if that, depending on what their schedules end up looking like. The viewing party is going to be all day on Saturday, all day on Sunday. Cool. So they're going to be, it's like a sponsor thing for the people that are actually there. So it's not really that big of a deal.
So in your own way, it was sort of your guys' answer to not having to bend to the booth babe sort of mentality.
It was kind of my doing. The viewing party is my project, my deal, and it was kind of my general suggestion, and I was the one that pushed for it and put the whole thing together. So it was kind of my doing, and I'm always happy to work with real community members rather than people that aren't involved in the community if we have a choice. And I like the idea of showcasing cosplayers. I was pretty involved in the League of Legends cosplay scene, and it's insane how robust it is, how many of them there are. If you go to PAX East, there will probably be at least 500 League of Legends cosplayers there. I'm not even fucking around. It is insane.
That's what I've heard.
Absolute insanity. And there will be like 3 Dota cosplays there. And I think some of that is because Riot does a lot with their cosplay community and helps, kind of build it up, and Valve doesn't really seem to give a shit about cosplayers. But I don't know. Once I realized that it wasn't just like weird people dressing up in costumes, and it's actually an art form that's just a different medium, I got a whole new appreciation for it, and I really appreciate what these people do, and I'm glad they're able to come to the event and get some exposure, and I think it will add a nice little flair to the viewing party.
I think it will. I was excited to hear that. Now I will say that I'm pretty sure Jessica Hunter is just close friends with Ashley, who you did invite, and I think that she was just
Oh,
giving her a
good.
hard time. I don't think she's actually mad
I'm
about
glad.
anything.
So
She's just a
it's humor
sarcastic
I
person.
don't understand.
Yes.
Oh, good.
She's just very
Sarcasm
sarcastic.
doesn't translate on Twitter. I'm
Never
just saying.
does. Never does.
It really doesn't. Just give up on sarcasm on Twitter unless you are that guy. And Jessica, you're not that guy. I'm sorry.
Nice. So, quick question before we move on to the BTS stuff. Coming off of Reddit, a gentleman named Floralise Small, I don't know what that even means, wants to know what is the difference, in your opinion, between the Han community that you came out of and the Dota community that you're now part of?
Oh, boy. Well, it depends what you mean by community, but well, go ahead.
I think I was going to say, like, just kind of like the, let's say the pro community, the support when you go to tournaments or as you sort of put on these productions.
Well, I think regardless of how you answer the question I just asked you, the fundamental difference is having a company behind the game that is competent. I mean, not to sound like a jerk here, but Valve compared to S2 is just like comparing high school football to the NFL to some degree in capital on hand, in success in previous titles, and also just their ability to manage an esport. And I really don't mean that to be shots fired. It's more just a honest bit of assessment in my experience working with both companies. I mean, Valve has done a really good job. I mean, they did a good job identifying the opportunity to just throw a blockbuster tournament with the International One, and obviously we've seen the success of the subsequent tournaments. And in general, I mean, say what you will about individual decisions or, you know, the PI Arcana if you really don't like it. You know, Valve does like to experiment. Sometimes they push it too far. That's kind of part of the territory, but I think overall they've done a fabulous job with Dota, and I think the game is just a lot more robust, a lot more balanced, and the company just has a very clean way of managing it and getting things put together. So I think that translates to the community where Han just never really had super stable teams. Basically, Han was NA Dota, where you have all these teams that aren't very stable. There's like maybe 50 people at its peak that are all really good, but there isn't enough money where they can play that seriously, and there aren't really any managers, so there's not a lot of organization, and there's a lot of tempers, and people are just kind of doing whatever they want, and they yell at each other, and the teams, every 3 months, there's like a new cycle whenever you lose a big tournament or you get in a fight with somebody. And now Dota 2, there's just enough money where you have managers, you have teams where there's contracts and expectations, and I mean, there's just enough content now that professional players are literally playing every day. There's not even time to scrim in some cases between all the traveling and all the actual league matches. So I think having that backbone and having that money, and Valve showing like, we're going to put down $1 million, that doesn't entice some third-party organizers to come in and start building an infrastructure around our game. I don't know what will. And S2 just simply didn't have that. From outsiders, like, what's the payoff? Is it worth the risk to sponsor a professional Han team and fly them around to events? At the time, it's an easy no. No one's gonna look at that SWOT analysis and be like, yeah, this is a fucking green light, boys, let's do it. It's just a rich person gambling at that point. So I think that's the fundamental difference, and that has allowed the players to kind of mature and, you know, start to replicate the behaviors of real athletes, and, you know how to talk to cameras, know how to do the sponsor jig, and also just, you know, carry themselves with more professionalism, and realize that building a team relationship over the course of years is more valuable than that short-term game of being able to yell at somebody because they fucked up in a game that was really important. And if you play enough, you realize that, man, everybody fucks up at some point. Sometimes it matters more than other fuck-ups, but, you know, everybody does it, and you have to just move on.
So speaking of the occasional fuck-ups, I would be remiss for us not to have a short chat about the incident that you already brought up a little bit earlier today. And I do want to follow up and say I did see the video, but I didn't study it closely enough to see that Dota was on the computer in the background. I'm sure someone did, and those people out there should question themselves. But at the end of the day, actually, I had Cap on the show not too long ago, and he and I spoke about how impressed we were with the way that you handled sort of the chaos of the incident, and the podcast you released shortly thereafter I thought was really a great way to handle it. I know that some people, they did things as far as you said to send copies to your parents. I did want to ask, how did your parents like, you didn't mention how your parents handled that part of the deal.
Well, yeah, I think I am pretty proud of the way I handled my online persona, the way I like reacted to stuff and was very tactful about my way of going about dealing with it, and, you know, I didn't want to come off defensive and all this kind of stuff. So I think it was a really good learning experience on that front, in terms of just how to handle yourself in damage control and not make matters worse. I told my parents pretty early on after it happened. It was pretty devastating, honestly. I mean, it's sort of, I'm pretty over it now, but at the time it was very just, I'm not the kind of person that's very uptight. It wasn't really the nudity aspect that bothered me. Just like, oh my God, like 100,000 people saw me doing something embarrassing. Like, oh, give me a break. I don't really get embarrassed that easily. It was more like it's at the time, Garena ended up dumping my contract because of it.
Wow.
So I lost my paying gig at the time, and I felt like I was really starting to pick up momentum. You know, I had like consistent contracts, and I was making at least some. I was banking a little bit of money, being able to live at home and do esports, and
Right.
just feeling like I just threw away what I've been working for like 3 years because I accidentally forgot to turn off the stream. Like
Yeah.
that's such a minor little. I just literally had to remember to click the button, and I could have saved my career. And at the time, I didn't think I would ever find a company that would, you know, see past that or be able to deal with it, or just, you know, whatever. I just thought it would forever be my, you know, my tarnish mark, my, you know, my burn that would forever ruin my quote unquote brand. So real life, I was a mess. I was seeing a girl at the time, and it was trying to explain it to her. She was not esports savvy, and she was
Right.
kind of an asshole anyway. So it was just not very easy to explain it to her, and I basically was just like, that was one of those, just like, it's over, just don't fucking talk to me. Like I can't even. I gotta work on me right now. I spent a good month, or probably a good 3 weeks, just living in darkness, watching TV, just kind of a plant, totally zonked out, drinking and smoking cigarettes way too much. Dark place, but you kind of bounce back. What kind of got me out of the funk was I ended up going to DreamHack Winter that year. I already had a vacation planned. I'd booked it way in advance. I was going to stay with one of my Swedish friends and his family, and I was going to cancel the trip, and I ended up going, and it was really powerful for me to go and talk to people at S2 and see everyone and just sort of show my face publicly. And I think it helped quell some of the, like, you know, some people were like, damn, that takes at least a little bit of brass to do that, and then show your face at an event and still do stuff. And I don't know, for me personally, it kind of reinvigorated me a little bit, and just kind of got me out of my funk. And the job that I ended up getting for IT support, I got an email about it while I was in Sweden of the opportunity, and I applied just on a whim while I was in Sweden, and got the job, and just ended up kind of trying it out for a few months, or for 6 months rather. Yeah, funny you mentioned that little podcast I did afterwards. At the time, I was really happy with it, and I think it was an okay way to handle it, but
Yeah.
I made it unlisted a while ago, and I actually just recently deleted it from my YouTube. I finally, it was right before, it was when I decided I was going to cut my hair, but hadn't cut it
Right.
yet. I looked at that and just said, you know what? We're moving on. And I fucking deleted it, and that was kind of just a good moment of clarity, or it's like, I'm just letting this shit go. And I don't know. It's one of those things where it really doesn't bother me as much as people think it bothers me. You know, if you know me in real life, it comes up a lot, and you know, I make jokes about it, and it's not that much. I get comments from people sometimes on Reddit. They're just like, you need to lighten up and like make jokes about it all the time. I'm like, I just don't care about it. You know,
Right.
I'm not gonna like make lame sniff jokes at the end of every cast, even though it doesn't bother me. It's just not the kind of humor I'm going for. You know,
Right.
it's not because I'm uptight or really embarrassed or like, oh, it's ruining my brand. It's just like, I just don't want to talk about my balls, dude. There are more interesting things to talk about. But it seems like the haircut has helped quell some people. I'm actually astonished by the amount of messages I've gotten of people saying, you know, when you had that long hair, I used to spam sniff all the time, but I'm not going to do that anymore. I promise.
Wow.
And I've gotten a lot of those messages. Like at least like 20 or 30 people have PM'd me that, or like, you know, sent it on like YouTube messages or comments and stuff. Just like that. Thank you, but I don't know that I really like you.
Right.
Like,
Right. Does it ever surprise you that for a community of people that, let's be honest, is made up of a lot of us who probably didn't have the best maybe junior high or high school experiences, or have been given a hard time in our life because of our love of things like video games? And maybe it's just me, I'm 31, so I grew up in a time when video games wasn't okay, and I was playing EverQuest, you know, in the dark and not telling my friends about it at basketball practice. But it seems weird to me that a community that is sort of still very fringe is so hard on each other and ourselves. Like, I mean, at the end of the day, you cut your hair and it seems like people are nicer. That sort of blows my mind.
Me too. I mean, I expected it a little bit, you know, like I thought there would be some people, there would be a general reaction. It's like, oh, I didn't like the dreads. You know, it became, as I talked about in the podcast after, it just kind of became apparent that it was just a dread. It was one thing that LD said on me. He's like, you've been successful in spite of your dreads. And I'm just like, you know, that's kind of a good point. I wonder what I could do if I didn't have them. The possibilities. So it just, it felt like it was time. You know, I was ready to move on. And on top of all that, I was just ready for a change. You know, you have dreadlocks for 4 years. You just start to think, you know what? I can't remember what it feels like to be able to scratch my head. I think it might be time for an experiment, boys. Let's, you know.
That's awesome.
Sometimes it feels like it's time. But yeah, it blows my mind sometimes how eager our community is just to put people down, but I think it fits kind of the psyche a little bit. It's sort of like that whole cycle of abuse, you know. The more you're abused, the more you start to feel, sometimes on some of a subconscious level, that that's just, you know, what other people like, or, you know, you get that little bit of satisfaction out of it, and it's just okay to be like that to other people because other people have been that way to you. So I think we get stuck in that kind of catch-22 of people are mean to each other, and that makes other people be mean to each other. So if you were put down in real life, it's a release. You know, Dota's a way to release some of that real life frustration. Which, when you think about it like that, I'd rather somebody lash out at me on the internet than lash out at somebody in real life with, you know, a physical repercussion. So if it's some sort of a release for somebody, even though it's unwarranted and immature and frustrating, you know, you get kind of used to it after a while. All of us, every caster, not even just people at BTS, you're used to being a punching bag because everybody likes their own flavor when it comes to casters. You know, everybody gets it. Even your most popular casters, you either love Toby or you love LD. Most people don't love both of them. And, you know, if you love LD, you think Toby's shit. If you love Toby, you think LD's shit. If you like either of them, you just think that I'm shit. You know, for whatever reason, it gives people pleasure to let LD know how shitty he is, and I don't know why that gives people so much pleasure, but they just need to try the good stuff, and I don't know how to get them to do that over the internet, Toffees.
Well, I enjoy whichever of them is listening right now, so that's my basis. So we got a lot of questions about your hair, obviously, on the Reddit post. Some people want to know, did you do anything with the dreads, or just let them sweep it away?
I have them in a bag sitting under my desk right now. So,
really?
Yeah, sure.
That's awesome.
I mean, what are you going to throw them away for?
It's one of those things. What do you do with them?
Even if I never end up using them or do anything with them, I've got them. I don't know. I'm weird like that. I'm sort of a... I'm not a hoarder.
Here's what I think
like
you should...
save things.
I would like to see during the summit, we have some sort of bet among the players, and whoever loses has to be tied to a chair with your dreads. That I think would be hilarious. So that said, though, guys, there is a blog post all about the haircut. We're not going to go any more into it, but if you want to see it, you can go see that over on Zyori's podcast. Where can they find the podcast, Zyori?
Let's see. The link on my website is actually really assy. Zyori.tv has the podcast on the main feed, but it's like Zyori.tv/category/podcast here. I'll drop a link to the podcast here. I got you covered. It's number 56.
There you go. So it's number 56, and I will say that inside of that podcast, there is a lovely little anecdote about an old man who watched the entire haircut start to finish, and then just at the end of it goes, why? And I don't want to ruin it for you. You guys have to go watch the podcast to get it, but the story was hilarious, and I'm glad you told it. But I could just envision this old man sitting there with this look on his face, and it had to have been wonderful, and probably the best part of getting the whole haircut, I would imagine.
They were dumbfounded. Old people, sometimes they're annoying, but sometimes they make for good stories, I have to admit. Even though the lady was rather condescending. Yeah, I agree with Toff. He's not going to spoil it. You have to check out the podcast. It's a good one.
So, and we're not just doing this as a podcast plug, but let's move on to working at BTS. A lot of people want to know about this. Here's my question. So I went through and I looked at all the Reddit questions. This is the one that I want to know. Do you guys at the house ever get together and compare the sizes of your Twitch subs?
Twitch subs. A little bit. It's more Twitter followers, mostly because LD doesn't stream, Gods doesn't stream, Brian streams once every 3 months, so that takes it to me, Ben, and Coddle Guy, and there's not much discussion there. It's obvious Ben whoops both of us, and Coddle Guy is ahead of me by a pretty good margin. So there's not much to talk about, but Twitter followers, that's where the real talk is about. We are pretty serious and competitive about Twitter. LD and Gods are way ahead of us, but it's more, I won't say who, but we all tend to have Twitter rivals that we pick pretty arbitrarily, and we try to outpace them. And sort of, at least I have a few that I keep up with my benchmarks, man. Nice. And it's a good feeling when you outpace your arbitrary rival, I have to say.
Can you tell us who your arbitrary rival is?
I don't want to. I really don't. Well, mostly because it's the irony. It's an inside. I can't.
Do you know how far ahead that person is right now?
They are. I beat him. I pulled ahead. The haircut let me cruise into first place. Nice. So I'm feeling really good.
So keep the follows coming, so Zyori feels good about himself, guys.
Please,
that's important.
Twitter is that is our medium. I don't know. Facebook. Forget about Facebook, dude. It's getting more and more assy by the month. And Zuckerberg, man, he's going to keep trying to Zuckerberg all of us. He's already selling our data for an absurd amount. Guys, just stop it with the Facebook. I mean, like BTS on Facebook. Don't stop that. But if you have to pick one or the other, go with Twitter. It's way more useful. Facebook is, you don't even get the updates. Right. I see the reach that we get relative to how many followers we have. I feel bad for the people that follow the Facebook and expect to get updates on what we're doing. It's terrible.
Yeah, I won't even make a Facebook site. So I want to point out that Beef over in the Twitch chat has said that he has officially unfollowed everyone else on BTS. So kudos to you there. What have I done? I'm single-handedly breaking BTS's reach. But back to the house, Draco Jan over on Reddit wants to know, how does a normal day at BTS play out? And do any of you guys actually have day jobs in addition to casting?
Well, these are tame questions coming from Reddit. Usually the most common question I get about the house is, how many times has somebody walked in on someone else masturbating? I'm like, why? It's a recurring question. I've gotten it a whole bunch of times. I don't know why people are so obsessed with that. But the answer is 0, by the way. None. There have been no reports of Rogue masturbating in the house.
Thank you for answering the disgusting question you posed yourself.
Well, I just wanted to... maybe if I say it here, that'll quell future askers of the masturbation question. But no, it's actually probably a little more boring than what people imagine. I probably shouldn't ruin the hype, but we're all pretty nerdy. We all are older. I think everyone in the house has graduated undergrad, so we're all pretty used to just hiding in our little hole and working on our 2 or 3 monitor setup. And we talk on Skype a lot, even though we're all in the house all the time. We have meetings pretty frequently now, especially when it comes summit time. But we started having weekly meetings. We have quarterly meetings, and BTS is kind of an interesting company because it started most businesses start as a business with a business plan by business people, and you have this whole idea to make money. And BTS kind of started as just a collaboration of talent. The 2 Davids, let's cast was it G1 League or whatever, let's just start casting tournaments, and it's just grown from there. Let's bring another caster in. All right, let's bring another caster in. Oh, now we need a stats man. Oh, now we need a business manager. Oh, now we need an artist. And it's grown into this legitimate organization that makes money and pays people and has full-time employees and buys all this gear and is now hosting these tournaments for hundreds of $1,000s in prizes. And we all cast a lot. Our primary job isn't running a business, it's casting Dota. We all do almost, not around summertime, but on average have a full-time workload of casting. You usually cast 30 to 40 hours a week depending on what the schedule looks like, sometimes more, sometimes less, as it tends to be pretty blocky. So the business, I don't want to say it comes second, but it's just we can't cut casting. That's our thing. That's what we do. So it's just been an interesting experience kind of building that business around it. And over this last year, we've really gotten a lot more organized with more meetings and having more of a workflow and being, we're pretty adamant about keeping track of when we try things. And a lot of stuff for us is experimenting. The first summit was just a giant experiment. We've never done it before. So making sure we have takeaways, things to learn and improve upon. And I think this time it's going to be a lot better. The stream is going to be a lot better, but the back end is going to be a lot more smooth. We have really a good handle on what's going on in our staff and that kind of stuff. But day to day, it's a lot of casting and working on individual projects. LD is kind of like the main business guy. He handles financial stuff, legal stuff, the kind of core business. Casting is my big thing, but I'm in charge of show content. I'm in charge of hiring. So when we were looking for a video producer, that kind of stuff. I'm sort of a general project manager for the Summit too. I'm in charge of all the logistics stuff, personnel and hospitality and all that jazz. Brian, kind of our handyman. He does all the physical stuff. He does most of the interfacing with Valve. He's kind of our item workshop guy. And Brian's kind of our odd job dude because his schedule is not really tied to a casting schedule. So he can work kind of on any time zone, kind of do whatever. Parker casts a lot, does a lot of scheduling, and Merlini does basically just casting. So everybody has their own little thing, and we collaborate and then kind of work independently. So it's really a lot of independent study. And I'm sad to report. But it's cool. It's a lot of fun having everybody within an arm's reach, and it's a mix of personalities. The nights that we choose to engage in light drinking are usually the more interesting because we have a group of casters, so everybody loves to hear themselves talk, especially once the liquid courage gets flowing. And we all love to. LD is a philosophy major. We all love to debate and argue and talk, and it just, if you don't yell, you are not being heard, and it's fun. It's yelling in a good way.
So are you guys streaming these drinking sessions? Because I know there's another studio that's streaming family dinners, and people are tuning into that. So I don't know why they wouldn't watch you drink alcohol. That's got to be something that would be enjoyable.
Yeah, we're a little wary of. We don't really want to promote alcohol on Twitch. I think that's against
fair.
the terms of service.
That makes sense.
You know, you can drink on stream, just you have to be kind of an adult about it and not be too ridiculous. And we also, you know, just do a lot more content than GD Studio. So they're not quite under the same microscope that we are, I guess, in terms of that kind of stuff. But yeah, we started doing BTS after hours. Usually there's there's a little bit of courage in each of those beverages, you know. But no, we don't usually stream the drunken shenanigans. I think the most heated debate we ever got in was the classic argument, the effectiveness of the FDA, with LD making a point that you can't really trust an organic label, and basically the FDA is useless government bloat, and K-Pop Toast's argument that the FDA is good, not great. It could be a lot better. They do a lot of things bad, but it's the best we can do, and it still does a lot of good. And that was, that was heated. That was one that just ended with one person going, you know what? I'm fucking done. I'm going to bed. I can't do this, dude. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to bed. There was a point where we had to take a 30-minute hiatus so LD could go upstairs and print out quote-unquote facts. He came down with a tree worth of paper, and I remember, he just started flipping through it going, just look at all this information. Like, no one is going to read that, dude. Don't even, it's fun, though. I think we all feel a little bit lucky that we have this really diverse group where it's like Ben's from Georgia, Brian's from Alabama, I'm from Jersey, LD's from Jersey, Gods is from Australia. We had an intern from Malaysia. You know, Dakota's from California, was living in New York, from all over the place, different ages, different backgrounds, and we have a pretty good harmony in the house. You know, no one really fights. There isn't like that one messy or stinky roommate. Everybody's pretty normal. Everyone's had enough shitty roommates. They know how to be a normal person, and everybody's had a real life job to the point that they know what's at stake. Even when we have to do shitty, like, monotonous work or stuff that's frustrating, it's still better than the alternative, which is going back to grinding IT jobs, which nobody looks forward to.
Absolutely. Or 100,000 jobs out there that are definitely not as awesome. So let me ask you this. And first I want to say, though, I'm with LD, but only because my wife's a scientist, so I have a unique insight on some of these things, on the whole organic argument. But what is BTS doing to get ready for the summit? I know that we want to talk a little bit about the tournament coming in. This is your chance. How are we getting ready? Tell us some things that we may not get to see. Because when I watched it last time, I just saw some guys sitting on a couch. But I know there's a lot more to it than that.
Well, that's one of the things we're hoping to fix this time around. The first time we had a couple of priorities, and as I said before, it was just one big experiment. So at the very beginning, basically our first meeting, we said, these are the things we really can't afford to fuck up. One of them was a bad tournament itself. So we wanted to make sure the format was sound. We had basic logistics to get the players to and from. We had computers, the basics to just have a tournament where players can play. We're not plagued by pauses. You know, we're not going to get DDoSed. You know, we had a very strict no Skype rule, all this kind of stuff. And the second was to make sure that the players have a good time. So one of the things that we talk about and the players talked about a lot was the food, where we did a full lunch and dinner every day and a small breakfast in the mornings. And every meal we had an Eastern option, a Western option, and something that was semi-healthy. Usually it was pretty bland, like some vegetables or a vegetable and some chicken or something. But, we had an Asian option, and, we had, like one day we did Chipotle, one day we did Chick-fil-A. We did all sorts of different stuff and had it catered, and just, wanted to make sure people were comfortable and happy and the house wasn't too full. So those were our two big things. And I think we achieved both of those. In general, the players liked the event. They felt comfortable, had a good time, and I think most of them were pretty excited about coming back. And the content, we really thought we could do a lot more of it on the fly. We thought players would be more eager to cast, and some of it was our oversight with the schedule. We messed up a little bit with how much time it would take in between games. So this time we're adding a third playing room. So that means the downtime is going to be significantly less. So basically it's scheduled like A versus B, B versus C, C versus D. So one team always stays on at least as much as possible. Sometimes you have to do a double switch. But that really cuts down the downtime. So you can take a 5-10 minute break, whatever you have to do, run some commercials, do a little post game, and then the next game is basically ready to start. The second team's already been set up, warming up. That during the duration of that whole last match. So I think that alone is a really big change that will really help. But we're investing in a mobile camera, a mobile mic. So this time,
Nice.
like, we wanted to do floor reporter interviews where I was just going to pop in and say, all right, guys, let's see what's going on in the lounge, and just talk to people. And when you're running cables, like, you know, like 150-foot cable, like snaking around the house, it becomes a safety hazard, and it's just not feasible to do quickly and efficiently. So we have some solutions to get more behind-the-scenes content. We have a lot more activities planned, and the schedule is just going to be a lot lighter. Most teams will have at least one day where they have no matches to play because they're either like secured in the finals, or, you know, whatever, they've been eliminated, or they just don't have matches scheduled. So teams will have a lot more downtime to either play some fun games off to the side, where we're going to have some other streams and other stuff set up, or just times to cast. And this time we're expanding the viewing party into 2 days, so that's going to be a much more robust experience. We're going to have some giveaways. We're going to have more organized player signings. And I think this team, at least 1 or 2 people from every team will do a signing, whereas last time it was kind of a random mismatch. We're going to have cosplayers coming, as we already talked about. But for behind the scenes at the tournament, we're also bringing in some additional talent. Some of it is not announced yet. We have a couple surprises in store. Cool. So this time we wanted to be a little more fun, not show our hand right away. So there are still quite a few fun announcements we have planned, staggered, starting very soon, leading up to the event. So we really do have a lot more fun stuff. And I think even just our add-ons from the stretch goals, like the tag team tournament, a lot more fun. You know, the 1v1 tournament last time was admittedly a bit lackluster. A lot of players didn't really want to do it. And it just, I don't know. It just wasn't really, in my head, I thought it was going to be a lot cooler than it ended up being. And it was sort of thrown together last minute. And same with the Pudge Wars. It was a really cool idea on paper, but it ended up just not being a great spectator experience. And it was cool that it worked, and I think it was a novel idea, but unfortunately, it's just hard to watch. You have 10 Pudges running around throwing these weird-looking hooks. I don't know. But I think the tag team tournament is a really cool idea, where one player uses a mouse, one player uses the keyboard. It will probably be players on different teams, so that'll be mic'd up, and hearing them interact and stuff, I think, is much more in the nature of the event, getting the players to flame each other and talk. And the All-Star match, I think, will be fun. We will not let Cyborg Matt turn on cheats, so I assure you this All-Star match will at least not have thrones spawning in the middle of the lanes, I think.
We can only hope, and
and
that's the hard part, right? I mean, you're running a tournament, and you guys can only do so much. You pros have their own personalities, and if they're not into the All-Star match, there's only so much that can be done about something like that. So a little bit tough. By the way, that question came from Neil BT. I should give him some credit. I think we were all thinking it, but he wrote it down, so kudos to him. Is there anything else you want to tell us about the up-and-coming BTS that we need to know to make us rush out and buy the ticket if we haven't already, or if we weren't convinced by that awesome gyrocopter? Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, well, I mean, the chest is pretty cool. I actually have a couple to give away. You know what, Toffees? We can give away one if you want on your show. Do you want to do it? Do you want the code so you can give it away live? Am I ruining the immersion here?
No, this is fine. Immersion it away. All of you Monday viewers, sucks to be you, but follow me on Twitter and this wouldn't have happened.
All right, there you go. I'm gonna have to find the document here, and I'll send it to you. I don't remember where I saved it. Hopefully, I'll have some codes to give you. I hope I didn't just hype something that doesn't exist. Anyway, for the upcoming Summit 2, yeah, the sets were pretty cool. The Timbersaw set, I think we were all a little bit like, it's the second Timbersaw set, but it's not the coolest of them. The Gyro set makes up for any of the ones that you think are shortcoming. The PA set was a little hit or miss. You either loved it or you hate it. You either love PA with facial hair, or you don't dig on ladies with facial hair so much. I personally am not so into ladies with facial hair, but hey, man, to each his own. You do you. I think the Gyro set really makes up for anything that you thought the chest might have been lacking. The Compendium is, it's cool value. I don't know if you're a compendium. I feel like you're either a compendium person or you're not. I don't know if there's anything I can say that will sway the non-compendium people. The TI4 compendium sets the standard, and we don't have immortals to give away. So we were all very satisfied with our compendium sales. I think always a little disappointed to see how few people vote on things in general, real life and Dota combined. The turnout for people voting on the Redemption team was good in terms of just general voting turnout, but less than a majority. I don't really want to say the specific number. I'm not sure if I'm cleared. Got to ask LD if I'm cleared to give out that kind of data, man. But it was less than the majority. So it's always, you're looking at man, more than 50% of you could have voted and you just didn't. I
Right.
really wonder which team you wanted at the event. Your feedback is valuable. You spent money on this. Please help
Right.
us help you. And I just don't know how to communicate that to people. It would be really nice if you could send like a pop-up, to people that bought the compendium or something to remind them
Right.
that voting is active. But
I'm sure the American government feels exactly the same way. So that's we just had midterm
Hey,
elections,
man.
and I think it was I think you had a better turnout in your compendium than we had on most midterm elections.
Probably.
So
Well, what's sad about that is the midterm elections are where all the power's at. Everyone
know.
votes for the president as if he
Oh,
can
it's
do
just so mad.
something. He's just he or she is just a fucking figurehead, man. You gotta vote for the senators and the House Congress, man. They're the ones
Thank you.
fucking it all up.
Thank you. As a poli-sci minor and a history teacher, I appreciate you saying that. Go to your damn midterm elections. The presidents don't matter. Anyway, that's beside the point. So as we transition out of the kind of BTS house talk, I want to go into a couple of quick questions. Starting out with this, what is your main time sink that isn't Dota related? Whether it's a game or a hobby, what do you like to do outside of Dota?
This is an embarrassing question. I have this friend. It's actually a subscriber that I talk to semi-regularly. We're kind of friendly, and she asks me regularly, "Oh, you doing anything fun this weekend?" And I always feel bad saying, "No. Haven't you learned by now that I don't ever do anything fun on the weekends? I don't have the concept of weekends. That's like
Right.
we just cast when there's shit to do, and sometimes you get a day off. Sometimes it's a Tuesday, Monday. Sometimes it's a Friday, Saturday. It's really pretty random. So we don't really get out that much. We could certainly get out more than we do. We started going out to a weekly BTS dinner, so that occupies a little bit of time. But I'm pretty lazy. If I'm not doing yoga or doing something outside, unfortunately, I don't really have a lot of friends in the area. I don't have a group of friends. I'd be like, all right, guys, I'm gonna
Right.
go out with my other friends and do real life stuff. It's all computer. I chat with my long distance friends. I watch Netflix. I watch too much Netflix. I watch a lot of HBO Go.
Nice.
I podcast. I'm a busy guy, dude. Work on my website, podcast, stream, cast, do BTS stuff.
I
there's
contend
Plenty of
that there's
esports stuff to go around.
Well, there's no esports personality, I think, out there that's successful that isn't "quote unquote" a busy person, because it's just so hard to stay relevant. So let me ask you this: you watch HBO Go, you watch Netflix, and you go out to dinner with the team. Do you guys have a restaurant you go to all together, or is it you switch it up every single week for the BTS dinner?
We are big fans of this place called the Yard House. We went there during the
good.
NA Hub. Gerg would attest to the quality of the beverages and the grub. There's a couple other places. Brian, K-Pop-Tosis is usually our scout for prime new joints to check out, and he does pretty well. He's pretty plugged into the hipster vibe, I think. He likes hipster music, so the cute little we went to I forget what they called it. It was one of those places where it was called a bakery, but it was actually
Right.
like a sit-down restaurant that had a bakery attached to it. Very hipster. They had maple popcorn with bacon. It was good, though, I have to admit. It was
That
delicious.
sounds interesting, but I trust your judgment on that. HBO
we
Go,
look
Netflix.
for beer menus.
Okay,
Yeah, that's what
I
we
respect
look for.
that.
A big beer menu.
Big beer menu. So HBO, Netflix. What's your favorite show that you've either watched in the past, or what are you watching right now?
Well, I have to admit, this is. I always make jokes about this. Like, I used to always. When I was working with Itsugosu and we were doing tournaments, the girl that I was casting with, Sneaky, and we'd always do the Itsugosu after party after a successful tournament. And I would almost always drink Cosmopolitans, and I would always say, doing it Carrie Bradshaw style tonight,
my
what's up,
God.
bitches? And few people ever got the joke, of course.
I don't even understand. What's that from?
Main character from Sex and the City,
I know.
Sarah Jessica Parker. She always drinks Cosmopolitans. Fabulous show. I stand by it. Not my all-time favorite show. I'm a big Star Trek guy. I would say Star Trek: The Next Generation is by far the best television series to have ever come onto the airwaves. That's just me, though. I like True Blood. I did enjoy True Blood. The last few seasons were rather shitty. I didn't like it at first, but I kind of got hooked into it. Sex and the City is great, though. It's good stuff. Quality show. Toffees, if you're curious about what's going on in the inner workings of the woman's mind, just pop it on, and there's no filter, dude. It's great.
So,
and girls think it's sexy. Most
you know-
girls will be kind of like, all right, that's
So
cool.
here's
I can
my
talk about my period in
follow-up.
front of it.
Here's my follow-up for Sex in the City. Ironically enough, one of the reasons that I'm even involved with esports is Sex in the City. And that's because I'm married, and my wife wanted to have a girls' night at the house every Wednesday where they would just watch Sex in the City for a few hours and drink Cosmos. And I said, like hell am I going to be there while you're doing that? I will allow it, and I will have girls' night if I can upgrade my computer and get a second monitor so I can get a little more serious into gaming. And she said, deal. So I upgraded to what I needed to start streaming, and started my streaming. I literally made my Twitch account the first night that she watched Sex and the City with her girls. So there's my reason for enjoying Sex and the City, though I've never actually watched the entire thing. But hey, maybe now I will at your recommendation.
Wow. That is amazing. It is a little bit of a boring show. It's not a show that I can grind. I can't just sit down and do a 12-hour power day of Sex in the City. You know, it's not House of Cards, but it is. There are some good points. It's a cute show. You know, whatever. It makes me dream about living in New York City and having a lot of money, which I know is never going to happen.
That's Kotal's lifestyle, though, right? Kotal guy.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, you can ask him, I guess, about the details of his New York life. Yeah, so, but I mean, I like HBO in general, though. We watched True Detective at BTS. It was good. Game of Thrones, obvious choice. I love Bill Maher, though. That's the other thing. I watch a lot of Bill Maher, and Last Week Tonight, I think, are two of my favorite.
Last Week Tonight is amazing. Kudos on that one.
It's really good. I mean, I like political stuff. I talk about politics a little bit in my podcast. I've always been interested in it, so I like to stay up to date. Bill Maher, I don't agree with him 100%, but I like his show. I like his format a lot. He does like a one-on-one interview, then a panel with three, then kind of a like sort of one-on-one interview with the panel, and then a full 5-person panel. It's very, very diverse. Tends to be a good mix of opinions, you know. But Star Trek, dude, Next Generation all the way. If you haven't watched it, doing yourself a disservice. And The Office. I've watched the full series of The Office probably like 5 times, and I'm still watching it, man. That shit makes me laugh so hard. I cannot describe how much happiness The Office has brought to my life. It's a close to TNG.
I have enjoyed The Office thoroughly. I will make sure I check out Star Trek. Well, let's transition into a question that I'm curious. I've asked a lot of people this in an interview, actually, with Jess Brohard at TI4, which that's her real name. I had to check the Twitch to find out if that was true or not.
You know, that was one of the first questions I asked her when I met her.
Me too. So, real name. She does. She actually has it on her Twitch stream that says it is my real name in big letters. But at TI4, you said that you were rooting for all the North American teams all the way. We didn't win, unfortunately. Do you think that TI5 could be the year for North America?
Yeah, I think so. EG is a team that I enjoy. I know some of their players from Han, so I've just been following their progression as a player for a long time. PPD and Zai are two really good examples. Like PPD was around kind of before I started casting. I remember when Zai was like just starting to come to prevalence in Han, when people were realizing like, hey, this guy, back then his name was Zai. It was MMBZAI, and he dropped the for probably a good call. It's kind of a mouthful to try and cast.
Right.
So it's kind of cool to see someone that like I was around when he was just getting discovered, and seeing him now like, you know, placing well at TI, and, you know, being a really successful player and a really successful, cool dude. So I like EG for that reason, and I also just kind of like their personalities. I like casting with PPD. Him and I had a little falling out back in the Han days, and we've kind of patched it over. So now we've cast a little bit on BTS. I think it's really just because he wants to cast on BTS, and I happen to be there. But still, it's fun. I enjoy it. Peter, if you ever listen to this, I enjoy casting with you, buddy. His sense of humor really cracks me up. Very dry. The delivery. The PPD Salt videos are much to my liking. I find them quite hysterical. So
maybe their year.
I think so. I mean, I like the team. I'm a little biased, but they're very skilled. I think PPD's become a really strong drafter. I think he's hard to draft against because he's very, very versatile, has a lot of different, just has a really good take on the game, and I can really respect a drafter that pulls heroes out that you don't see very often, that are outside of the meta and can still win with them. It's one thing if you're one of those drafters kind of like Go Black, where you experiment a lot and you have all these crazy drafts, but if you don't really win a lot, it's not really quite the same. But PPD is, like I remember that Treant coming to Rise, where I can't really say he discovered Treant, but it's just like no one is playing this hero, and now people are first banning this hero just against your team. That kind of shit is cool. That really makes me respect a team, and I think that's just a sign that they're difficult to deal with from the opposition's eyes. And I don't know, man. I have some faith in EG. I think I think EG Secret could be a very realistic situation for Summit 2 finals, just based on the lineup.
Awesome. So, and along things that I respect, I want to talk about, and regarding some of the casting that you've done recently, North American and South American teams are sort of my realm in this tier 2, tier 3 sort of level. And I love tuning in to see these guys playing at bigger tournaments. In fact, I think it was Leviathan was playing in a tournament that you covered a couple of weeks ago. It was the Summit American Qualifiers. And I know that a bunch of other North American kind of smaller teams were in there. And I was really impressed with the fact that you knew you knew things about these smaller teams. Like your comment on Jenkins' mastery of Pudge and calling out some of the picks ahead of time was really cool to me, because it's rare that you see big casters for larger companies knowing the small tournaments. And for those of you who don't know, just to give you the Zyori was absolutely correct. Jenkins was on the show a week later and I asked him about it. He has over 1,000 games played on Pudge alone. So the guy loves Pudge. But do you go out of your way to do this research, or how does that sort of come about?
A little bit, probably a surprising amount to most people just comes kind of ad lib, where I'll be casting with someone. Blaze is a really good resource where Blaze is probably the caster I would rate highest in terms of how much research he does before he casts. Coddle Guy as well. Those two are like probably my top two of people I've seen that just take a lot of notes, and Blaze will be frustrated with me if I don't tell him far enough ahead of time which matches he'll be casting, because he doesn't have time to look it up and look at their most recent picks and trends and just kind of check out their last few games so he knows what's going on in the draft. And to be fair, I think I actually got that Pudge tip from Blaze, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
So a lot of it just kind of comes in passing when you see stuff, and if it just takes one game for something like that, where Jenkins, before that, I think the match you're referencing where I was casting with Merlini, when I got to, it's like 5th pick Pudge, and he was cynical about it, and I got to kind of rub it in his face. It's not very often I'm right over Merlini, so when it does happen, you gotta rub it in, man. Gotta make the most of those moments.
That's true.
But it really depends on the event. If you're going to a big event like a TI or a Star Ladder or any kind of LAN finals, that's when I do a lot more research, where I really try to familiarize myself with picking trends and what teams do, and trying to find ways to think about their play style and try to summarize it and put it into words ahead of time, so that when I need to recall it on the panel, it's kind of snappy and I'm like, oh yeah, I've already thought about this, and I don't have to do it live. For smaller matches where it's lesser known teams, it's a little random. Like, there are some lesser known teams I know really well just because I've happened to have cast their players in Han, or way back in the day in Dota, and others I cast them and I just have no clue. So I would say it's kind of hit or miss, and in that particular, you're probably looking at the right place at the right time, man. And I looked really smart, but I try to do as much research as I can, but with some of the smaller players, it is difficult. It's nice having Merlini as an asset because he plays in NEL and the other leagues. So in North America, I can often, I thinking back to maybe 2 weeks ago, we were casting a game, and I said, all right, are you aware of this guy? He's like, yeah, that's my friend. I'm like, all right, dude, calm the fuck down. No one's trying to take your friend away from you, dude. You got real belligerent. These are all my friends, okay? I'm like, okay, dude, Jesus. They can still be your friends after this if you calm down.
Seems very angry for a man who just made a Zen post on his blog. But
we all have stress levels. They're rising.
So let's do this. Let's do a quick hot seat, couple of questions for you. I'm going to throw at you. We'll do some quick short answers, and then roll into the wrap-up. So first, do you have any favorite co-casters?
Merlini is my number one, for sure. I think if I just had to pick, if I was casting TI, for example, and Valve said, who do you pick? 100%, I think Merlini is my best partner. I think him and I have a unique back and forth. I think Merlini is a good enough caster that he can cast with anyone and make them look good, but I think him and I have a very unique back and forth that even the other BTS casters don't quite have that same kind of goofiness that Ben and I have. Number two, Synderen's pretty high up there. Another case of just, he's a chameleon caster, very easy to cast with. David Parker's pretty high on my list. And if I had to pick a pro player that doesn't cast very often, I would probably say PPD, though it depends on the cast. We're doing a LAN finals. I'd want somebody like Bulba, who's not afraid to talk and just share his strategies. If it's a fun online game that I can mess around a bit, then I'd pick somebody like PPD, who I can kind of poke fun at and have him stonewall me.
Nice. So that was a question from Clusters. Question number 2 coming of Rawlstuff J. Guys, get better Reddit names for crying out loud. What is a major and what is a minor component of casting that viewers might not be aware of?
I think a major component is what we talked about earlier, with the kind of loneliness, where people often talk to me like, dude, you're living the dream. This is awesome. And it's not that I hate my job, but it's it's not always this like amazing burst of positivity where you have to really get jaded and kind of used to seeing people say really mean things about you, being able to read it and not get tilted. And we all get into that zone sometimes where if one of us fucks up or tweets something we shouldn't have, or, you know, gets into a flame war with somebody, and, you know, or you just be like, you get mad that you're caught up in the drama, and it becomes a time sink where you're just fiending comments and resisting that urge not to reply and just wasting your time and your mental energy on something that's really negative. And it takes practice, years of practice to be able to deal with that. And, you know, like I can read Reddit now and just go, yeah, they're talking about my balls. Oh, geez. And just kind of laugh it off and go, okay, you know, I can't do anything. All I can do is try and do better and, you know, distract them with other things. I think that's the biggest thing that people don't realize, that day after day after day of just dealing with Twitch chat and reading that negativity. And even if you're doing really well, it's weird having all of our work always out there to be judged by people that are really self-entitled and think they have really loud voices. So it can be frustrating, and I think it really takes a network of people, like we're all living in the house and we can all laugh it off together and kind of sift through it together and be like, you know what, we have a general sort of sentiment at the house that most flames and, like, you know, really mean things that people say about you or the company are based on an inkling of truth it's really exaggerated and blown out of proportion. You know, not everything. Some people are just flaming for the sake of flaming, but a lot of the time, you know, like, he's always repeating himself over and over. Like, obviously, I'm not always, that's hyperbole, but I probably am being a little bit too repetitive. That's probably something I could work on. So having a group that can kind of read all that negativity and boil it down into something that's a little bit useful makes it a lot easier to work with. But it takes practice and self-discipline and a group of people to do that. If you're just at home casting by yourself, I think a lot of people don't realize how easy it is for that negativity to get you and get into a dark place. There isn't a caster that I know that hasn't at one point had some issue with depression where, you know, they mess up or they get flamed really hard and they kind of go into that dark place for a little while until there's some catalyst to bring it out. A minor thing about casting is it looks like all fun, but there's a lot of prep work that goes into it behind the scenes. You know, it looks like all we do at BTS is cast, but there's a shitload of logistics and business and stuff that goes on behind the scenes that you're not privy to and you're never going to be privy to because it's privileged information, you know. So there's just a lot of, it's weird knowing a lot of stuff and not being able to comment on it on Reddit when, you know, they're guessing at stuff and I'm like, I want to tell you how wrong you are, but I simply cannot, good sir. So good luck with that discussion.
So tips, if a new caster, which I'm sure happens to you 24/7, were to walk up to you and say, give me 2 tips for improvement, what would you give them?
I'm sorry, say that again?
If a new cat, right? Well, it's funny because Coddle Guy and LD started Bible thumping all over chat the second you named your favorite co-casters, and that made me laugh pretty hard. But if a new caster walked up to you and said, Zyori, give me some tips, what are 2 tips that you would give them to improve their skill level in casting?
Well, if we're just talking, there are a couple things, but I think the biggest thing that people in general need to improve on and need to recognize is very difficult is camera work. I think in general that it's kind of part and parcel with casting. Very few cases where you'll have dedicated obs, you don't have to worry about it, just because of the financial viability, right? It's a whole extra person you have to put there where, you know, a caster can do a pretty passable job most of the time. It's just like anything else. It just takes practice and it takes a skill set and it takes thoughtful practice, you know, not just, oh, I'm going to spectate some games. If you're just kind of running around with the camera and messing up and not really thinking about where you're messing up, it's not helpful practice. But sitting down and looking at where you failed, talking to people about general strategies and different approaches you can take to controlling the camera, I think that's one of the things I've improved on the most since I've come to BTS. I think I've improved in a lot of ways, but camera work in particular, mostly because when I came out, my camera work was abysmal. So it's not a very difficult thing to have improved on over, you know, 10 or 11 months. But that is the biggest thing, like just getting the habit of looking at the mini map and controlling the map, and just I don't have an easy way to summarize how to get better at camera work other than you eventually have a moment of clarity if you really think about it and review where you mess up and just it's all about the mini map, dude. It's all about the movements. You know, the best advice is something that Wayne Gretzky said: you don't want to go where the puck is, you want to be going where the puck's gonna be. You know, and that's how you have to kind of think about camera work. So I think that's one big thing. The other is just probably learning to suffer through watching yourself and criticizing yourself. in a way that's constructive. That's one thing that everybody hates it. You know, I don't know anybody that started casting was like, I just love listening to myself. This is awesome. You eventually get to a point where it doesn't bother you anymore, and you can sort of laugh at your own jokes if you still think they're funny, or, you know, laugh at a back and forth you have with a co-caster. But the way that I think I've improved the most over the years has just been like watching rebroadcasts of myself, just sitting down, putting it on in the background and listening and kind of jotting down, all right, what are the words that I'm overusing? What are the phrases that I'm saying too much? What are little habits that I have that when I'm looking at, or it's very easy to be critical of other casters, especially if you're a caster. You listen to somebody, you're like, oh, yeah, it's a stupid word, you know, because you hear it more when you're just sitting there as a spectator. So trying to apply that same filter of extreme criticism to people that are kind of your competitors that you sort of naturally do is, you know, it's like that natural ego type thing. Doing that to yourself and just listening to it and being able to say, yeah, if this was anybody else, I'd say, oh, what an idiot for fucking that up. And then just trying to apply that, you know, one thing at a time, say, okay, I'm going to remove, today I'm not going to say this word. For me, I get these catchphrases and I overuse them for like a period of time, for like 2 week span, and then I have to say to myself, all right, stop saying he got dropped like he was hot. You're saying that phrase way too much. And then I'll totally cut it out, and then I won't say it at all, and I'll kind of forget about it. So for me, I have to constantly remind myself and do that check of, what am I saying too much? You know, oh, he's going to go. He's going to get him. He's going to, like, just, there are other words you can use. And the sooner you get used to listening to yourself and applying that filter, the sooner you can self-critique and work out those words. Because one of the hardest things for a new caster is getting valuable feedback. Twitch chat's not really valuable feedback. And most people that are casters and can give you valuable feedback have other shit to do and aren't just going to like sit down and watch your VODs and give you notes, you know?
Absolutely. So watch your own damn replays and master the mini maps. Those are two from the mouth of Zyori. And
where's the puck going, man? Get to where that puck is going to be.
Follow the world of Wayne Gretzky. And I'll tell you, I'm not famous and I'm not a paid caster. I don't make very much money at all doing this stuff. But playing a 5 position has been the biggest help to me as a caster than anything else, because you have to learn to watch that mini map and make calls in the same way you kind of have to run the camera, it feels like. So check that out. Here's a good question that came in from Hikura that I laughed up when I saw, and that is, who is your favorite historical character?
Historical character. So this is
or
just
person.
anybody
in history. Mine is Caligula. Who's yours?
Dead or alive, or it doesn't matter?
Dead or alive.
God, how does one decide a favorite? What metric do I use to gauge their level of favoritism? God, oh man, that is a big question there, Mr. Toffees.
It's a big one.
Caligula, man. Really, you're into the inbred insanity that was...
So Caligula, I like him because he was crazy, and he cracks me up because when the Republic of Rome said, well, you can't control us because we have a head of the Senate, he said, well, I get to name the head of the Senate, and it's my horse, so fuck you guys. And that cracked me up because it reminds me a lot of what's happening in the U.S. political system right now. So,
you know, he also cut a fetus out of his live wife and ate it because he thought it would let him grow another head so he could control the sun.
And
he was more than crazy, dude. He ate a fetus because he thought he would grow another head and become a god. Like, that is some Blade shit, dude.
Right?
Like, oh, man. I guess that's a pretty badass person to
Why is it? It's not like I idolize the man. I just think if they're going to make a movie, why not Caligula?
God, so just my favorite. Oh my God, I'm gonna have to be lame and pick somebody like Jim Morrison or something. I don't know. That's for some reason that's what comes to mind. I honestly don't think he would be that cool. If I could pick one person to go back and meet, I'd want to meet Jesus. I want to see what that dude's all about in real life. I don't give a shit about what everyone else has to say about him. I just want to see him.
Was it because of the hair? Like you guys felt like you had a bond from the past?
Yeah, I guess so. There's got to be somebody badass in the past that I'm not thinking of. I don't know. Probably Alan Watts. He probably did some cool shit.
Fair enough. So we sprung the question on you. It caught you off guard. But Jim Morrison and Jesus, I feel like that's the beginning of a good bar joke. So we'll go with those two. Jesus, Jim Morrison, and Zyori walk into a bar. And that's how we're going to leave that one. So here's the final question I want to ask you. I've asked most of the casters who come on the show this question, so it catches everyone off guard if they haven't pre-listened. And it's this. If your casting voice wore underpants, would it be a boxer's man or a briefs man?
My casting voice. Toffee, can I let you in on a little secret?
What's that?
It's not really a secret. I think most people know this by now. I don't wear underwear. I gave up on underwear like 5 years ago. And I for the life of me, I don't understand why men are still wearing it. I think it is a garment of the past. I think we need to progress as a species and recognize that we are slowly killing the environment with all of this unnecessary extra underwear we've got going on. in our modern era, where we have showers at our disposal once, twice, sometimes thrice a day, you don't need it, man. I mean, most people change their undies and their pants at a frequency that's like, why don't you just wear the pants? You know, if you're wearing the same pants like for a month straight, then switching the undies is a big deal. But basic hygienics is I digress. Anyway, so can I go commando? Can I pull like Kobayashi Maru this thing and just
absolutely
straight up say my voice would be commando as fuck?
Your voice would be commando. Is that just because it's aggressive or because you believe it's a good greenhouse policy?
Both. Absolutely both. Sometimes my voice just needs to be a flipping and a flopping, my man.
I love it. So everybody let Al Gore know that the solution to global warming is, of course, us stopping the wearing of underwear. You're like a modern bra burner in 2014. I love it. I love it. But, guys, that is all the time we have for the interview today. We went a little bit long, but hopefully had a good time. I know I did. A big shout-out. Thank you to Zayori for being here. Thank you to the fans, you guys, for sitting in, watching the show. It's been great. I've got to give the obligatory plugs real quick. If you want to support the show, you can follow me at Toffees_Dota2. If you want to support the show monetarily or with love messages, you can go over to patreon.com/Toffees. I don't do sponsors for the show, so everything is literally done by love. And if you want to help pay for our hosting, you're more than welcome to. If not, just enjoy the show. And finally, I do want to let you know that you can go over to mixlr.com/Dota FM, and we are launching this week the brand new Dota FM, where we're going to do audio side-along coverage with major tournaments so that you can listen while you're at work. So check that out. I'll be tweeting about it. Follow me if you want to hear more about it. But we basically ripped a page out of Zayori's book and decided that I was going to go ahead and launch this thing. So hopefully that works out.
Yeah, good luck to you, sir. It's tough. I mean, sorry if we've gone on too long, but yeah, it's fine. It's a tough market, man. I really do think that the audio-only podcast market of esports in general, particularly Dota 2, is an underserved market. I've been trying to convince people of this for a while. I think of Dota Radio as one of my pocket strats. It's like my backup plan, sort of like grad school. If everything fails, if I accidentally show the world my balls again and get fired, at least I've got Dota Radio. I don't know. I think there is possibilities of making that project profitable. But I think it takes a lot of time, a lot of manpower or woman power, and I don't know, man. Good luck to you. That's all I have to say. I've worked it out on paper, and I hope you got a lot of time.
Well, for what it's worth, and for those who are tuning in or people who are potentially thinking about listening, my wife and I are a very progressive couple. I actually worked the last 3 months, and she took off to stay with the baby, and now we're switching, so I'll be staying home for about 3 months while she works. And I have to, do things with the child, like hold him and swaddle and things of that nature. So running a camera is difficult, but I can talk, and he loves to hear the talking. He loves watching Dota. It's actually the only time he's ever quiet. Wow. So I figured, why not do this? I've got 3 months to talk about Dota and not have to run a camera. So it should be a good time. You guys should definitely join us. There's an Android app and an iPhone app, so you can listen anywhere that you are. Zayori, do you have any shout-outs or final thoughts before we move on?
Well, shout out to everybody that watches Beyond the Summit, and all the people that are going to watch the Summit too and help support it by buying compendiums and treasures. The big thing that I do outside of BTS is the Zayori podcast. That's like the only project that I still have going from the Zayori days. So if you're into the audio-only thing, the podcast stuff, check it out. It's available at Zayori.tv. Here, I'll drop a link for some shameless plugging here. But you can get it on iTunes, like every other podcast out there, and get an RSS feed and everything. It's weekly-ish. I like to think it's a pretty good podcast. I think I've gotten a lot better at it. It's a mixture of Dota, esports stuff, and then just various other things that irk me throughout my daily life, which is a lot of things. So, yeah, that's it. Toffees, it's a pleasure. I wish you luck, man. I'm glad someone else is following in the footsteps of Dota Radio to do some audio-only content and do this kind of stuff. I think there is still a big gap in the market, especially when we're not doing in the studio. It's coming back at the beginning of next year, but it's another month and a half off or so until we really get that going again. So I think there's a gap in this kind of stuff, and keep fighting the good fight, man. I appreciate it.
That's all you can do every day. And now for those of you guys who are here, by the way, we said we were going to give away a treasure. So here's what I want to do, because I want to get as many people to see the Zayori interview and hear all about underpants and all the fun stuff that we've talked about. We learned a lot of great things about the Summit too, which is going to be going on. So what I'm going to do is, once this video is uploaded tonight, I am going to tweet it out, and I'm going to say retweet for enter, and anyone who retweets the Zayori interview tonight will be entered in a drawing to win a brand spanking new, super sweet Beyond the Summit treasure bundle. So what I'll do is I'll draw
it's
from
the
that.
treasure of the Summit's Peak. So it's the thing where you could get the gyro drop. Yeah, it's
Which
not
I
the
got,
bundle.
which I got on my first try. So, okay, so it's not the compendium bundle. It's the treasure. I did first try. First try.
It's just a treasure. So don't get too excited by this. You get an item set, so it's pretty nice.
Yeah.
You know?
You get money's worth of stuff. So we'll be giving it away.
Yeah. Sell it on the market. There you go.
Look for the retweet, every retweet, and then tomorrow I'll actually do a drawing and we'll award that to one lucky fan. So make sure you guys are watching for that tweet tonight, and you'll have plenty of time to get that thing retweeted out. Thank you again to Zayori for being here. Muchos gracias. That's thank you, muchos, for those of you who don't speak the Spanish language. Thank you to everyone who's watching. And of course, one last time, as always, Toffee's out.